Oh man, Chad, our millions of followers are gonna love this one.
Indeed, my good sir. Indeed. Sorry. What's Good grief. Wait. I forgot. I got this.
Dude, we're gonna work a toy. A replica. Supposed to go counterclockwise anyway.
It doesn't matter which way you go.
Yeah, you're right. It doesn't matter. Because you're not gonna open up four.
As we enter the heart of the fourth phase of the ever-expanding Marvel Cinematic Universe, we find Doctor Strange and the Scarlet Witch descending into the Multiverse of Madness.
How many variants of themselves will they find? What fates await them in the rest of the MCU? More importantly, will you enjoy this movie? In the movie galaxy of the YouTube universe, you've landed on Frame Rate Studio, your guide for all things movies. I'm Chad.
And I'm Corey. Marvel's Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness helps kick off the summer blockbuster season, and Frame Rate Studio is entering the movie's madness.
Now, before we head into the review, we know that spoilers are always a big concern with a movie like this. So, anything we cover from the Multiverse of Madness will contain no more spoilers than you can already find in the trailers.
But there may be spoilers for the past events in the MCU, so consider yourself warned. I'm just going to start off with this one statement, then you can say whatever you want. And this is just for your knowledge and everyone else's knowledge. Doctor Strange is my favorite MCU character. Now, that's the MCU, not Marvel. MCU character. I've enjoyed him ever since the first one, everything that he's been in since then. So I really haven't watched many trailers. I was excited for this just once it was coming out. So I will let you say, hey, was there too much in the trailers? Was it just the right level? Did we have a lot of Hulks that were actually Hulkbusters? In the trailer. So what?
I think the question I would have as well is after 27 movies up to this point in the MCU, first off, do we even need a trailer? Do you really need to be convinced to go to an MCU movie at this point? And if you do you need more than one? Not really. And then really the last point is, what I will say is, so if you've watched the trailers, this isn't, once again, warned you that we weren't going to say anything more than what was in the trailers. In the second trailer, you hear the voice of Patrick Stewart.
We should tell him the truth.
Presumably as Dr. X. But, obviously he's been in the universe before. Was somebody after the first trailer not convinced, and now all of a sudden, well, now I'm convinced I'm going to go because I hear Patrick Stewart's voice, so now I'm going to go. Think of how big of a much bigger reveal that could have been. No different than showing Hawkeye/Ronan showing up. If the way to do for you to see that once you get into the theater.
Yeah, that opening statement that I made about the ever-expanding universe, in a few rehearsals, I said the over-expanding, because it is. It's really getting to that point where it's almost too large. I'm sitting here trying to think of going back and trying to get through 27 movies and the TV series. I looked it up online and I couldn't find anything current. I found something back from 2019 where someone asked a question and they said it was something like 333 hours of movies, which equals about actually, it was about 14 days you'd have to watch straight through. That's no breaks.
What about bathroom breaks? Does anybody gonna take bathroom breaks?
No.
No large
hey,
sodas,
hey,
folks.
it doesn't matter. You've got cell phones now, so you can go sit on the pot and just.
It's getting to a point where it almost feels daunting to try and keep up with all this, as far as where everything's going. So, one quick thing, I went out and did a little search because at a certain point, you're going to go, do I really want to sit down and watch all this again? Don't get me wrong, I have loved the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but there's some of it that I don't necessarily want to go back and revisit, or Dark World. So, if you want to just get the Cliff's Notes version, down in the description below, there will be a link to two videos. One that gives a recap of what's happened in the MCU up to this point, and one that gives just a little bit shorter that gives you pretty much what you need to know before you go into this new Doctor Strange.
One other thing I am seeing as they are moving on and they're getting into this, and I think we both kind of felt it in this one, is the change in tone. I think it's pushing a hard PG-13, where I did hear back when they were first going to start filming this that it was going to possibly be very much a horror flick. They're not too far off from that description. It very much is disturbing in many scenes, intense for viewers. And yeah, so it's taken on a whole nother theme. It's still lighthearted, has a lot of funny moments in it, but it is getting to be intense.
Yes, there was a change in tone with this. While yes, it has its funny moments, I would say that a lot of those are near the beginning when things are a little less serious at that point. As they get more serious, you're starting to see this. It sort of morphs into a bit more of a kind of into the realm of more psychological thriller with a lot of the tones that they're dealing with. And you brought up, some of the graphic nature of it. I would say for the MCU, this is probably the bloodiest MCU movie we've seen.
Yeah, and I wouldn't actually. I don't know if I'd go as far as the blood in it, but definitely the deaths. It's gruesome deaths, the way people die, but they don't explode. But you do see plenty of blood because there is some makeup effects that really gives a creepy presence to one character, and I don't want to say anything because it kind of would be a little bit of a spoiler when they show up. But you just have this feeling that this has been your horror killer who's been on a rampage, and they're just kind of covered in the remains of their victims. Another thing, not the opening battle, but it's the very second big battle. There are scenes in it that look kind of cartoonish. But I mean, it's still good. I mean, I don't want to be taken away that you're completely distracted from it. It's just, as me, I'm kind of more of the effects guy. I like to watch and enjoy them. That kind of pulled me out of it. Second thing I was going to say, I enjoyed Dr. Zombie, as I call him. I liked him a lot better in the trailer because once you get to see him and he's on screen a long time, he's a long ways from The Walking Dead. Greg Nicotero would not be happy with that work.
I'd say more, and some of this falls into that comic books tend to like to, you know, steal wouldn't be the word, borrow. There's the right word, borrow from each other. And while the beginning scene with the big, it's what is it, Gargantos? I think is what the name of the creature is at the very beginning.
The one-eyed monster.
The one-eyed monster, yeah, exactly, yeah, the one-eyed monster. It's in all.
They
the
just wanted us to say that, didn't they?
But the one that's in all the trailers, I think the thing I would say is that little bit too reminiscent in certain ways to, I don't know what the name of it is, but basically the giant starfish they fight in the Suicide Squad movie. Kind of made me think Starro. There it goes. Yeah, Starro. That's even much simpler, But yeah, little too reminiscent of that. But that's more of a story choice than has to do with the effect. But I mean, overall though, of course, one of the stars of this is the visual effects. I mean, that's what you go into a Doctor Strange movie expecting. There's a part where Wanda is stuck in the mirror dimension that is really cool, and also that she's trying to get out. That's also very well done and very cool, very well done as always.
Oh yeah, and we kind of talked about if we wanted to mention the cinematography. Cinematography is the same, pretty much what you're always getting in a Marvel movie, except for we also realize that there's probably not a lot of cinematography. It's so CGI. I mean, it's probably 80% of it is green screen.
But that lets us segue fairly easily into acting. Because think about how much acting had to be done against the green
Yes.
screen and with really nothing there. You're acting with air. Great job by the cast. As always, Benedict as always.
Cumberbach,
Yeah, okay.
Cumberbun.
Yes, smart Alec. Yes, let's use all the names that he is not. As always, Benedict Cumberbatch does a fantastic job. It just shows the dedication he has that he took the time to basically create all these different versions of Doctor Strange and give thought to that of making them each a little bit different. Making them all act a little bit different. So there was this difference besides the makeup and besides how some of them are dressed. That truly they're carrying themselves different.
One of the other acting performances is you looked up how to pronounce her.
I'll give you a little help here. It's Sochile Gomez.
Okay. So she did a really awesome job.
I think overall, though, for this being her first feature film, and especially on the stage that she's at, I mean, she does a very good job. She holds her own, with Benedict, and also, I think Elizabeth Olsen does a great job. She has a lot of depth to her character. I mean, the same, I guess, emotion that you were seeing out of her in all the episodes of WandaVision, you see her that carry through to this. She does a great job, and it continues to really. She continues to do a good job of developing that character even more. Now, one other person I want to throw out that is always I enjoy him in every movie, and you can call him by his last name, whether in the movie as the character or in real life. It's Wong. He plays the serious moments when he needs to, but he provides that right amount of comic relief, and he's always fun to see come on the screen. He's just a fun guy to watch. So, kudos to him as well, especially to stand out in that cast of people. Great job.
I was really impressed with the music. The music felt as though it was different for every dimension. There was something, just the feel of the music was different. So the use of music in this movie is great. Even just a little teaser when they weaponize it.
Yes. That whole scene where, as you're saying, they weaponize it is, I think it's cool from just the fight that ensues, the visual effects they use, how they tie the music in with it, and I'll build off your point. Yes, there's very much you can tell it's not overly evident, but yeah, you can tell there's some differences when they go from world to world because there's a point where, you know, Strange is in one world and Wanda's in a different world, and when they go from the one to the other, there's a kind of cool way that the music transitions from one to the other that I thought was good,
And that, I mean, Sam Raimi, he does a awesome job. You can feel Spider-Man and you can feel Evil Dead in it. He's in it all the way through.
No, I think he was for the tone that they decided to go with for this movie, and that it needed to strike the tone of being able to be both funny and psychological thriller kind of horror. For it needing to be both of those things, he was definitely the right choice because think back to watching Evil Dead. I mean, yeah, it definitely has its funny moments, but it has its very, dark moments as well.
All right, let's move into our final thoughts.
Okay, you first.
Me first. Okay, me first. All right. I want to start off by saying this has a very different feel than the first movie. So if you go in expecting the same thing, you may be disappointed. If you view it as a movie on its own, it's a great movie. So don't compare it. It's just so different, you can't compare the two. Second point is it's a great unification film for Sam Raimi. Evil Dead and Spider-Man come together. The feel of those two movies are just done. He knows how to scare you and yet entertain you with comedic actions through the whole entire time. Still related to it, but kind of on a different note, the MCU is getting too big. We need to start figuring out how to split off and really let worlds be separate worlds. Because if you come into this one and you've missed some movies, you can still enjoy it, but you'll miss a lot of references. And not everybody has Disney Plus, so you might be missing out on the WandaVision part. This also has a different feel, not just from the original Doctor Strange film, but also from the rest of the MCU films. This is much more grittier, gruesome than those before it. It is pushing the PG-13 rating very hard. It's as close to an R as it can possibly get. I mean, there's probably a little more leeway, but it's awfully close. All right, that is my final thoughts, my points, my takeaway from it. What do you have to say?
So for me, this was a fun time. I had a really good time, but it is darker. It hits the ground running. It never really slows down except for a few moments here or there. It heads down a darker path, a new path, as Corey has covered. But overall, I had a great time. As with many of the Marvel movies, but especially the Doctor Strange movies or the movies that Doctor Strange is a part of, it's visually stunning. Everything that happens within the mirror dimension, everything that happens with America Chavez as she jumps between worlds within the multiverse, it's just beautiful. Third point, well acted, very well acted. As usual, Benedict Cumberbatch does not disappoint. He makes sure that each of his versions of Doctor Strange are just a little bit different. And he continues to grow as a character. We've got the breakout performance by Xochitl Gomez as America Chavez. It was great to see her on the screen. And I think she did great as far as her representation of the character, and with it being her first movie. And then just a continued strong performance by Elizabeth Olsen as she continues to really dive into what makes, Wanda who she is and what makes Wanda tick. And I swear we don't talk about these ahead of the time, but my fourth point really isn't, like Corey said, isn't about the movie itself. It's more about the MCU. Is it getting too big? Do we have too much stuff to cover here? Keep in mind, I know it's hard to believe, but this is now 14 years old, this whole thing. Started back in 2008 with Iron Man. There's just too much to keep up with.
All right. There's the final thoughts. I think the only thing that's left for us to do is to give you our ratings, how we score it out of 100. I guess since I started also, I will give my rating first. I was expecting it to be a little bit higher, but also, like I said, I tried not to compare it. I think I did compare it to the first one a little bit, so it may be a little bit lower than what I was hoping it would be, but it's still a strong score from me, I feel. I gave it a 73 out of 100.
I was a little bit more generous. I went with the 83 out of 100. I think probably this I would say, is probably one of my top 5 now as far as Marvel movies. It was that much fun. I think it was that I had a lot of fun with it, which is what really helped it for me. So, what do you guys think? Do you agree with us, or have we descended into madness? Let us know in the comments below.
And if you like what you just watched, give us the green light by liking, subscribing, and sharing this with the world. Also, be sure to hit that notification bell so each time we drop a new video, you will be notified.
From the cast at Frame Rate Studio.
Cat.
From what?
Cat.
Corey? What?
God.
Oh. So, yeah, as I was saying, from the cast of Frame Rate Studios, we thank you for joining us on this trek through the movie galaxy of the YouTube Multiverse?
Yep. What was that?
Who were they?
They looked like us,
Heck, but the one that looked like me had a beard.
and I had a fedora. I look good in a fedora.
Really? That's what you took out of that?
It worked.
Yeah. And it was freaking awesome! I mean, wow! Wow, it really worked! And did you see the look on our faces? I mean, not our faces, but, our faces.
Yeah, but I called you Corey.
Yeah. I called you Chad. Huh. I guess counterclockwise does matter.